The Christian Girl and Her Muslim Apostate Lover. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story is narrated in 3 books. Book 3. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the actual life of a Muslim apostate girl in Sudan. Therefore, all names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. Chapter 78. The deeply ingrained misogynistic teachings in Islam. In all her controversial writings, the freedom fighter and genius author Ibn Taha al-Amin has not authored a book that focused on the problems of Muslim women except this one. The Quranic concept of the virgins of paradise makes Muslim men treat Muslim women like dirt and use them as human meat just to satisfy their lust temporarily. Every Muslim man despises the women of this earth and yearns for the virgins of paradise. Each woman for them is just a pussy and nothing else. Islam teaches that the women of this earth are unclean, unfaithful, deficient in religion and intellect, condemned by Allah, and are already on their respective journeys to hell. The Prophet Muhammad said the Muslim woman is a wara, which means she is a mere pussy. From head to toe, she is a wara and hence she must be covered and completely concealed by the burqa and niqab. Perhaps, the best way to bring out this point correctly is to refer to what the most influential and greatest Muslim theologian and scholar Al-Ghazali mentions about women. The Imam Al-Ghazali is called the greatest Muslim scholar of all time. He is considered to be the greatest Muslim theologian, scholar, jurist, mystic, philosopher, and thinker who ever existed after the Prophet Muhammad. He was of Persian descent, Iranian today. Al-Ghazali was known as Al-Ghazalis to the Western medieval world. His influences in the Muslim world can be compared to St. Augustine's achievements in the Christian world. The defender of Islam or proof of Islam, Hujjat al-Islam in Arabic, as he is frequently referred to, had authored around 1,000 books on the sciences of Islam, Islamic jurisprudence. The greatest Muslim historian and sociologist Ibn Khaldun described these Islamic sciences as knowledge of the rules of God, which concern the actions of persons who find themselves bound to obey the Sharia laws respecting what is required, sinful, disapproved, or neutral. Al-Ghazali is accredited and appreciated by all Muslim scholars and ordinary Muslims for achieving 2 goals that in my opinion did damage to the Islamic community rather than improved it. Firstly, he criticized Western philosophy and made it taboo for Muslims until today. Secondly, he reconciled Orthodox Islam with Sufism. That means the Muslim can follow Sharia law and be a mystic at the same time. Before Al-Ghazali, the followers of those 2 schools hated and vehemently criticized and condemned one another. In his renowned book, The Revival of Religious Sciences, Imam Al-Ghazali defines the woman's role in the following duties. She should stay at home and get on with her spinning. She can go out only in emergencies. She must not be well informed, nor must she be communicative with her neighbors and only visit them when absolutely necessary. She should take care of her husband and respect him in his presence and his absence and seek to satisfy him in everything. She must not leave her house without his permission, and if given his permission, she must leave secretly. She should put on old clothes and take deserted streets and alleys, avoid markets, and make sure that a stranger does not hear her voice, her footsteps, smell her, or recognize her. Her sole worry should be her albud, her pussy or reproductive organ, her home as well as her prayers, and her fasting, starvation for Allah. If a friend of her husband comes when her husband is absent, she must not open the door nor reply to him in order to safeguard her albud, which is her pussy or her vagina. She should accept what her husband gives her as sufficient sexual needs at any time. She should be clean and ready to satisfy her husband's sexual needs at any moment. The greatest Islamic theologian warns all Muslim men to be careful of women, for their guile is immense and their mischief is noxious. They are immoral and mean-spirited. Al-Ghazali also states it is a fact that all the trials, misfortunes, and woes which befall men come from women. In his book, Counsel for Kings, the Imam Al-Ghazali sums up all that a woman is fated to endure her lot because of Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden. When the first woman in the world, Eve, ate the fruit which Allah had forbidden her from the tree in paradise, the Lord cursed women with 17 punishments. 1. Menstruation. 2. Childbirth. 3. Separation from her father and mother and marriage to a stranger. 4. Pregnancy. 5. Not having control over her own person. 6. A lesser share in inheritance, 1/2 of the male entitlement as per the Quran. 7. Her liability to be divorced and inability to initiate divorce. 8. Acknowledge the law allowing the man to have 4 wives, but for the woman to have only 1 husband. 9. The fact that she must stay secluded in the house. 10. The fact that she must keep her head covered inside the house. 11. The fact that weight of 2 women's testimonies has to be set against the testimony of a man. 12. The fact that she must not venture beyond the house unless accompanied by a near male relative, her husband, or a close male relative known as a muharram, such as her father or brother. 13. The fact that men take part on Friday and feast days, public prayers, and funerals, while women are forbidden from those Islamic practices. 14. Disqualification for leadership and judgeship. That means the Muslim woman is not allowed by the Sharia to be a leader, president, imama, or judge. 15. The fact that merit has 1,000 components, only one of which is attributable to women, while 999 are attributable to men. 16. The fact that if women are profligate, they will be given twice as much torment as the rest of the community on the resurrection day. 17. The fact that if their husbands die, they must observe a waiting period of 3 months and 10 days before remarrying. The idea that a woman's sole purpose and duty is to stay at home to satisfy the sexual appetite of her husband is again summed up in Al-Ghazali's book, Proof of Islam. The Imam Al-Ghazali is called the defender of Islam as well as the proof of Islam. This most influential thinker of Islam has molded the minds of millions of Muslims with his opinions on woman's character. He said, "If you relax the woman's leash a tiny bit, she will take you and bolt wildly. Their deception, women, is awesome, and their wickedness is contagious. Bad character and feeble mind are their predominant traits." Al-Ghazali also exhorted women, "A wife should never refuse to give her pussy to her husband, even if it is on the saddle of a camel." This advice is always quoted by Islamic religious leaders in the Muslim world. It was recently quoted by the Damned Obedient Wives Club in Malaysia. This strange advice is taken from a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad where he said that the wife should not say no to her husband's sexual need even if the two are sitting on the saddle of a moving camel in the desert. Al-Ghazali forbids Muslim men to teach their women to read and write. He says, "Do not add evil to unhappiness." He quoted his Prophet Muhammad, preventing women from learning to write, adopt positions opposite those of women. There is great virtue in such opposition. As the supreme jurist, Al-Ghazali defined marriage for Muslims. Marriage is a form of slavery. The woman is a man's female slave and her duty, therefore, is absolute obedience to her master who is her husband in all that he asks of her person. Islam allows a man to marry 4 women at any one time and to beat his wives. Surah Al-Nisa 4, verses 3 and 34. It allows only the man to initiate divorce, and in matters of law, reduces her testimony to half of that of a man. This in fact renders her solitary testimony inadmissible. If a Muslim woman witnesses the slaughter of her own son, she cannot testify in court about his murder. In addition to the other irregularities mentioned before, a man is promised 72 virgins in paradise, and the woman is fated to hellfire. To compound the gender inequality, women have to contend with widespread honor killings, child marriage, wife-beating, and female genital mutilation. Although there are so many injustices against women in Islam, the biggest evil has to be female genital mutilation. Female genital mutilation is based on 3 authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad which advocate female circumcision as compulsory for all Muslim women. 2 of those hadiths are mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. According to Prophet Muhammad, female genital mutilation is the preservation of honor for women, Sunan Abu Dawud. Following the commandment of their prophet, the majority of Muslims circumcise their female children with the belief that such practice helps their daughters preserve family honor. According to the World Health Organization, female genital mutilation is practiced in 28 countries in Western, Eastern, and Northeastern Africa, in parts of Asia and the Middle East countries, and within some immigrant communities in Europe, America and Canada, Australia, and South America. There are around 125 million Muslim women living today who got genitally mutilated in the Muslim world. Thousands upon thousands of small Muslim girls are subjected to the procedure of female genital mutilation yearly. The World Health Organization has offered 4 classifications of female genital mutilation. There are mainly 3 types: Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3. Type 1 is the removal of the clitoral hood, almost invariably accompanied by the removal of the clitoris itself, clitoridectomy. Type 2 is the removal of the clitoris and inner labia. Type 3 is known as infibulation. It involves the removal of all or part of the inner labia and outer labia, and usually the clitoris, and the fusion of the wound, leaving a small hole for the passage of urine and menstrual blood. The small aperture does not allow for the full and proper discharge of menstrual blood and tissue. The remaining blood causes many kinds of sicknesses in the girl. Such a small hole cannot enable the husband to insert his little finger in his bride's pussy. An erected male's phallus cannot enter such a tiny hole. For that reason, many brides were sent to the hospital on their first wedding nights to widen their small private parts so that their grooms could have normal sex with them. Besides, circumcision makes a Muslim girl has a numbed or dead pussy. Sex for her is worse than rape because she doesn't enjoy it. Some Muslim girls prefer anal sex rather than vaginal sex. They can't have orgasms because their clitorises were removed when they were female children through female genital mutilations. A case study by Jacques Lantier. This case study happened in Somalia and was reported by a first-hand female witness. She is a Western woman scholar who traveled to Somalia to do field research on female genital mutilation. She stated her witness in the following words. The female child, completely naked, is made to sit on a low stool. Several women take hold of her and open her legs wide. After separating her outer and inner labia, the female circumciser, usually a woman experienced in this procedure, sits down facing the female child. With her kitchen knife, she first pierces and slices open the hood of the clitoris. Then she begins to cut it out. While another woman wipes off the blood with a rag, the female circumciser digs with her sharp fingernail a hole the length of the clitoris to detach and pull out the organ. The little girl, held down by the women helpers, screams in extreme pain, but no one pays the slightest attention. The female circumciser finishes this job by entirely pulling out the clitoris and cutting it to the bone with her knife. Her female helpers again wipe off the spurting blood with a rag. The female circumciser then removes the remaining flesh, digging with her finger to remove any remnant of the clitoris among the flowing blood. The neighbor women are then invited to plunge their fingers into the bloody hole to verify that every piece of the clitoris is removed. This operation is not always well managed, as the little girl struggles. It often happens that any clumsy use of the knife or a poorly executed cut, the urethra is pierced or the rectum is cut open. If the little girl faints, the women blow pili pili, which is a hot spice powder, into her nostrils. But this is not the end. The most important part of the operation begins only now. After a short moment, the woman takes the knife again and cuts off the inner lips, labia minora, of the victim. The female helpers again wipe the blood with their rags. Then the female circumciser, with a swift motion of her knife, begins to scrape the skin from the inside of the large part, labia majora. The female circumciser conscientiously scrapes the flesh of the screaming female child without the slightest concern for the extreme pain she inflicts. When the wound is large enough, she adds some lengthwise cuts and several more incisions. The neighbor women carefully watch her work and encourage her. The female child now howls even more. Sometimes in a spasm, female children bite off their tongues. The women carefully watch to prevent such an accident. When her tongue flops out, they throw spice powder on it, hot red chili, which provokes an instant pulling back of the organ. With the abrasion of the skin completed according to the rules, the female circumciser closes the bleeding large lips and fixes them one against the other with long acacia thorns. At this stage of the operation, the female child is so exhausted that she stops crying, but often has convulsions. The woman then forces down her throat a concoction of plants. The female circumciser's chief concern is to leave an opening no larger than a kernel of corn or just big enough to allow urine, and later the menstrual flow, to pass. The family honor depends on making the opening as small as possible because with the Somalis, the smaller the artificial passage is, the greater the value of the girl and the higher the bride price. When the operation is finished, the woman pours water over the genital area of the girl and wipes her with a rag. Then the female child, who is held down all this time, is made to stand up. The woman then immobilizes her thighs by tying them together with ropes of goatskin. This bandage is applied from the knees to the waist of the girl and is left in place for about 2 weeks. The girl must remain lying on a prayer mat for the entire time while all the excrement evidently remains with her in the bandage. After that time, the girl is released and the bandage is cleaned. Her vagina is now closed, except for a tiny opening created by the insertion of straw or reed and remains closed until her marriage. Contrary to what one would assume, few girls die from this torture. There are, of course, various complications, which frequently leave the girl crippled and disabled for the rest of her life. Quoted from excerpts from Fran P. Hoskin. The Hoskin Report, Genital and Sexual Mutilation of Females. 4th Revised Edition, Women's International Network News Lexington, MA, 1993, pages 114 to 115, pages 199 to 202, and pages 216 to 218. According to Daniel Boyarin, religion is clearly for many, if not for most cultures, one of the primary systems for the construction of gendered roles, quoting Boyarin 1998, page 117. Thus, to understand gendered roles in Muslim societies, we need to see what the Islamic religion says about the roles of men and women. Many Muslim feminists today are critically studying and rewriting the issue of gender in Islam. Most of them argue that Muslim women are oppressed and marginalized in Islam. However, they argue that it is not the teaching of the Quran, but the hadiths, which put women in a lower status. In order to uplift women and give them equal rights as men, Muslim feminists argue that the misogynistic hadiths, sayings of the Prophet, must be disregarded. They believe that these misogynistic hadiths are the creation of later generations of Muslim leaders and scholars who came after the death of the Prophet and hence do not represent the true message of the Quran, which gives equal rights to men and women. Many Muslim scholars flatly rejected the feminist views because they are not backed up by any authentic teaching of Islam. The fundamentalists argue that the hadiths are authentic sayings of the Prophet, and rejecting them means denying the words of the infallible messenger of God. Therefore, they believe that it is not possible to understand the Quran without the hadiths, for they explain the Book of Allah. Accordingly, in the contemporary Muslim world, the hadiths, the life, sayings, and deeds of the Prophet Muhammad became a matter of disputation among scholars. In one camp, the feminists, reformists, and modernists call for a distinction between the misogynistic message of Islam, which contradicts the true spirit of the religion, and the egalitarian message of the Quran, which represents Islam in its purest form. In the other camp, we find the fundamentalists, traditionalists, and conservatives who accept all the traditions of Islam, which are in turn incorporated into the Sharia law. Islamic law as developed historically in the first 200 years after the Prophet's death. Though in a few cases, members of this first group are prepared to distinguish between authentic and non-authentic hadiths, the disputations between these two camps have not yet been settled, and due to outside influences, the gulf between the two becomes wider day after day. That said, These academic and scholarly issues have not affected the average Muslim woman. Most Muslims today accept the teachings of Islam, which have been passed down from generation to generation and preserved in the Sharia law, which in turn draws its authority and validity from the Quran and the Hadiths. In this book, I would like to examine critically the views of Muslim feminists and see whether their claims can be established despite the long tradition of Islam in which the Sharia law, which is based on the Quran and Hadiths, became the governing norms and laws of Muslims. Muslim scholars agree upon the authenticity of two collections of the Hadiths, Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Other collections, such as Ma'ad Malik, Sunan Abu Dawud, and Al-Tirmizi, have also been accepted and used in the formation of the Sharia. In general, the Hadiths collections are works that record in minute detail what the Prophet said and did. They constitute, along with the Quran, the book revealed by God, both the source of law and the standard for distinguishing the true from the false, the permitted from the forbidden. They have shaped Muslim ethics and values, quoting Mir-Nisai 1993, page 1. For the majority of Muslims, the authenticated hadith is sacred literature, only second in holiness to the Quran, citing Stroesser 1992, page 1. In comparing the authority of the former to the latter, the authentic hadith is believed to be nothing short of revelation, for the Quran says of Muhammad, he does not speak out of low desires. It is not but inspiration inspired, see Surah Al-Najm 53, verses 3-4. The only difference between the Quran and the Hadith is that whereas the former was revealed directly through the angel Gabriel with the very letters that are embodied by Allah, the latter was revealed without letters and words. Quoting Hack and Newton 1996, page 1. The Quran strongly endorses the authenticity of the Hadith and leaves Muslim men and women with no preference between the two. Whenever Allah and the Apostle have decided a matter, it is not for a faithful man or woman to follow a course of their own choice. See Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verse 36. Despite this strong belief in the Hadiths, today we find that some Muslim intellectual scholars, especially the feminists and the reformists, do not hesitate to question the authenticity of the Hadiths. They accept the important place that the Hadith occupies in Islam, but they want to distinguish between the authentic and non-authentic traditions of the Prophet. They use the Quran as a measuring rod, and any Hadith that contradicts the egalitarian spirit of the Quran must be rejected. This argument assumes that the Quran does not include a misogynistic message within its pages. One of these academic scholars is the female Professor Rifat Hassan, who states, "It is a clear teaching of the Quran that men and women are equal in the sight of God." Hassan 2001, page number 63. That said, the egalitarian message of the Quran is a controversial issue as well. Some Muslim feminists see contradictions in the Quran, and they support their views by referring to its teachings of men's superiority, polygamy, divorce, and wife-beating. See Surah Al-Nisa 4, verses 3 and 34, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verses 228 and 282, and Surah Al-An'am 6, verse 10. The Egyptian feminist Nawal El-Saadawi is one of those feminists who see contradictions in the Quran. She notes that God says in his book that he created men and women from the same soul, and then in another page, says the opposite, that men are superior to women. Nawal Saadawi 2001, page number 4. Thus, the egalitarian message of the Quran is not a settled issue. Those who preach such a message have to travel a long way before they can win even one convert. For their quest to formulate Quranic-based agendas for a renewed Islamic order, the general Muslim reaction to the questioning of Hadith authenticity remains strongly negative, quoting Stroesser 1992, page 1. Sample of the misogynistic Hadiths. Allah's Apostle once said to a group of women, "I have not seen anyone more deficient in intelligence and religion than you. A cautious, sensible man can be led astray by some of you." The women asked, "O Allah's Apostle, what is deficient in our intelligence and religion?" He said, "Is not the testimonies of two women are equal that of the witness of one man?" They replied in the affirmative. He said, "This is the deficiency of your intelligence. Isn't it true that a woman can neither pray nor fast during her menses?" The women replied in the affirmative. He said, "This is the deficiency in your religion. Sahih al-Bukhari, Hadith number 301. The authenticity of the above hadith is beyond dispute. It is mentioned repeatedly in the most authentic two collections of Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. When al-Bukhari and Muslim both accept a hadith, it is called mutafaqun alayhi, which means agreed upon by the two authentic collections of hadiths. Muslim scholars consider this the highest degree of authenticity and truthfulness, quoting Hack and Newton 1996, page 3. The Arabic phrase, al-nisa najisatan aglayan wadin, which means the women are deficient in intelligence and religion, is on the tip of every Muslim's tongue. This statement is used by scholars as well as laypeople to define women. There's a famous proverb in the Arab countries, which says, if a woman becomes an axe, she will not cut the head of anyone. This proverb does not only mean that the woman is weak, but she is utterly useless. To turn to further examples of the misogynistic hadiths of the Prophet of Islam. Muhammad said to his male followers, the woman is like a rib. If you try to straighten her, she will break. So, if you want to get benefit from her, do so while she still has some crookedness. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 7, Hadith number 113. He also said, wives are ungrateful to their husbands, and they are ungrateful for the favors and the good, charitable deeds done to them. If you have always been good, benevolent, to one of them, and then she sees something in you, not of her liking, she will say, I have never received any good from you. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 1, Hadith number 28. The Apostle of Allah said, when a woman comes, she comes in the form of a devil. Sahih Muslim, Hadith number 3240. Before his death, the Prophet of Islam said, I have not left any fitna, calamity, after me more detrimental to men than women. Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim agreed upon this hadith. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 7, Hadith number 33. Muhammad said to women, O women, give alms, as I have seen that the majority of the dwellers of hell were you, women. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 1, Hadith number 301. The Prophet Muhammad said, amongst the inmates of paradise, the women would form the minority. Sahih Muslim, Hadith number 6600. These two hadiths say the majority of Muslim women will end up in hellfire and live there forever and ever. The Prophet Muhammad said, those who entrust their affairs to a woman will never know prosperity. Mir-Nisa 1993, page 49. That means the Prophet of Islam believes that the woman is utterly useless and therefore she should not be given any leading role or any significant position, such as an imama, khalifa, leader, female judge, president, and teacher. The Moroccan female professor Fatima Mir-Nisa stated, some hadiths, prophetic tradition, originated from authentic kitab, Book of al-Bukhari, which are told by the teachers hurt me. They state that the Prophet said, dog, donkey, and woman would annul anyone's prayer whenever they pass ahead of them, break off between the praying man and Qibla. I was shocked to hear that sort of hadith and never repeat it with the hopes that silence would wipe away this hadith out of my mind. I asked, how come the Prophet said that sort of hadith which hurt me so much? How could the beloved Muhammad hurt a little girl who is in her growth, who is attempting to make him a pillar of her romantic dreams? Citing Mir-Nisa 1991, page 82. Muslim women and the authentic tradition of the Prophet Muhammad. Perhaps, the most accurate accounts of which Muslim women have been placed in a lower status by the Islamic teachings could be found in the writings of the Egyptian Muslim liberal thinker, Sayyid Mahmud al-Kimni. In his book, Rab al-Zaman, under an article entitled Women in Religious Heritage and Legends, which he delivered as a lecture to the People's Progressive Women's Union, al-Kimni held the Islamic heritage responsible for degrading Muslim women. Al-Kimni, Rab al-Zaman 1996, page 219. According to him, the religious heritage made the woman believe she has been created from a bent rib, deficient in religion and intellect. Her testimony equals half of a man's. Her inheritance is half of a man's. She cannot divorce her husband. Al-Kimni, page 220. The Muslim woman believes herself to be a Satan and therefore she cannot control her sexual desires. Al-Kimni, page 221. According to the Islamic heritage, a woman succumbs to her lust and not intellect. She has a natural tendency to cheat on her husband, because she is one of the four that could not be trusted: money, sultan, time, and woman, al-Kimni. Page 220. The woman had been created for the comfort and enjoyment of her husband. In that way, the religious heritage made the Muslim woman believe herself to be a mere pussy, and hence she became horma, taboo, and haram, forbidden, al-Kimni, page 221. Therefore, if she kept her faith and her vagina and gave enjoyment to her husband and master, she would enter heaven, al-Kimni, page 220. A woman's faith could not be perfected except by her complete obedience and submission to her husband, and such obedience would secure to her a place in heaven as a prostitute among the many harems of the man. 72 Virgins of Paradise, al-Kimni. Page 221. This gloomy picture that al-Kimni depicted for the Muslim woman irritated many Muslim female professors and ulama, or intellectual scholars of Al-Azhar al-Sharif University, who believe that Islam has honored the woman and put her in the best place. Al-Kimni states that the Quran gives two contradictory rights to women, al-Kimni 2004, page 170. While some verses make women equal to men, such as in Surah Al-Imran 3, verse 195, Surah Al-Nahl 16, verse 97, Surah Al-Tawbah 9, verse 71, Surah Al-Ahzab 33, verse 35, and Surah Al-Ma'idah 5, verse 38. This positive attitude towards women is distorted by Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 34, which allows the husband to beat his disobedient wife. In a hadith mentioned by Al-Bukhari, the Prophet said, "Any group of people who make the woman their female president will not prosper." Al-Kimni quotes many verses and hadiths to show that woman has been placed in a low position by Islam. In this regard, Al-Kimni refers to an incident in which he was condemned as a kafir or heretic unbeliever by the female professors of Al-Azhar University because he exposed in his book, Fascists and Nation, the low status in which Islam has put the woman. She is inferior to man in every respect and made for his sexual pleasure. The main reason for their protest was that Al-Kimni makes mistake by demanding rights for women, which Islam gave to men only. Al-Kimni, page number 177. The samples of the misogynistic hadiths and the accounts of Al-Kimni give an insight into the theory of women in Islam. It is evident that women are understood as causing constant threats to the social order and religion, and as such, they need to be brought under control. Quoting the words of Darlene M. Jushka, if women are understood to carry the darker elements of culture, the chaotic, the sexual, the irrational, then the suppression of these perceived threats is necessary. Citing Jushka 2001, page 161. Men's superiority over women in Islam. The Quran states that men and women are equal in regard to their religious obligations, rewards, punishment, and oneness of their creation. Surah Al-Imran 3, verse 195, and Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 1. And in other verses the Quran teaches that men are superior and 1 degree above the women. Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 34, and Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 228. The Algerian Fidelum Rabbit, commenting on the Quran verse Al-Nisa 4, verse 34, says, "What is really being communicated through this verse is that God prefers men over women because the latter are inferiors to the former." Quoting Smith 1978, page 526. According to the teaching of Islam, men are superior to women in knowledge, power, and authority, and that is because God prefers the former to the latter and men spend out of their means on women. Women are thought to be deficient in intelligence and religion. The Quran states, "And call into witness 2 witnesses, men, or if the 2 be not men, then 1 man and 2 women, such witness as you approve of, that if 1 woman errs the other will remind her." Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 282. This verse teaches that the woman has an inferior mentality to the man. There is no definition so widely used and accepted among Muslims for defining the woman than she is awara. The term awara is defined in the Encyclopedia of Islam as the external genitals, especially of the female, Hack and Newton 1996, page 5. So, to put it simply means the woman is a mere pussy. From her head to her feet, she is a walking and talking pussy. In another authentic hadith, Al-Tirmizi reported that the Prophet said, "The woman herself is awara." The woman is awara. When she goes outside the house, the devil welcomes her. Al-Tirmizi, Volume 2, Hadith number 65. Remember, according to the Encyclopedia of Islam, awara means the private parts of the female. Consequently, when the woman steps out of her house, Satan takes charge of this walking and talking open pussy and uses her to entice men and make them fall into the unpardonable sin of adultery. Therefore, this hadith says that the woman is possessed by demons as soon as she goes out of her confinement. So, she is dangerous to society and hence she is supposed to be imprisoned inside her house. The above two hadiths are pertaining to the woman's covering. There is a disagreement between the founders of the four schools of the Sharia. While Maliki and Hanbali schools allow the hands and face to remain uncovered, the schools of Hanafi and Shafi considered them to be awara or private parts and hence demand the woman to be completely veiled from head to feet. Hack and Newton 1996. Page 5. Some Muslim groups like supporters of the Prophet's Sunnah and Muslim Brothers considered even the woman's voice as awara and therefore would not permit her to speak anywhere. Furthermore, they will not shake hands with women when they greet them. To back up their views, they referred to some hadiths of the Prophet which are not mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. In those hadiths, the Prophet Muhammad said, "The woman's voice itself is a wara or pussy." In Kitab Adab al-Naika, Al-Tirmizi states, "3 persons, if you esteem them, they will dishonor you, and if you dishonor them, they will esteem you: the woman, the slave, and the Nabatean." Tirmizi, page 51. Narrated that Ibn Omar said, mention of bad omens was made in the presence of the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, and the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, "If bad omens are to be found in anything, it is in a house, a woman and a horse." Sahih al-Bukhari, hadith number 5094, and Sahih Muslim, hadith number 2252. Men's rights on women. Islam has ascribed some rights, which men have to their women. The most important of these rights is total obedience and submission of the woman to her man, husband, father, brother, uncle, and cousin. Wife obedience to her husband. Many hadiths are reported that comment on Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 34 of the Quran, which permits the man to beat his disobedient women. The Prophet said, "There are 3 persons whose prayer will not be accepted, nor their virtues are taken above to the sky: the runaway slave until he returns back to his master, the woman with whom her husband is dissatisfied, and the drunk until he becomes sober." Mishkat al-Masabi, English translation, Book 1, Hadith number 74. Whosoever female dies while her husband is pleased with her, she will enter paradise. Mishkat al-Masabi, English translation, Book 1, Hadith number 60. The Prophet of Allah said, "When a man calls his wife to satisfy his desire, let her come to him though she is occupied at the oven." Mishkat al-Masabi, English translation, Book 1, Hadith number 61. The Messenger of Allah said, "Whenever a man calls his wife to his bed and she refuses to come, and then he passes the night in an angry mood, the angels curse her till she gets up at dawn." Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 7, Hadith number 121. The above hadith is agreed upon, but Sahih Muslim reported the same hadith, but with a slight difference. When a man calls his wife to his bed, and she refuses, the one who is in the sky will be angry with her until her husband is pleased with her. Hack and Newton 1996, page 7. The Prophet Muhammad said, "Had I ordered anybody to prostrate before anyone, I would have ordered women to prostrate before their husbands on account of men's rights over the women ordained by Allah." Mishkat al-Masabi, English translation, Hadith number 70. Reported by Abu Dawud, Ahmed, Al-Tirmizi, Ibn Majah, and Ibn Hibban. Permission for wife's beating. The Quran states, Righteous women are therefore obedient. And those you fear may be rebellious, or nushus, admonish them, separate them to their couches, and then beat them. Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 34. The above verse became very controversial among modern scholars. Feminists, reformists, and liberal Muslims argue that this verse does not imply that the husband can beat his wife if she becomes rebellious. They try to find different meanings for the word idrebahan and refer to the suitable one for the interpretation of the verse. An example of these efforts can be seen in Asma Parl's book, Believing Women in Islam. However, these efforts became difficult to accept when we refer to the verse to the occasion of its revelation. The above verse was revealed in connection with a woman who complained to Muhammad that her husband slapped her on the face, which was still marked by the slap. At first, the Prophet said to her, "Get even with him," but then added, "Wait until I think about it." Later on, the above verse was revealed, after which the Prophet said, "We wanted one thing, but Allah wanted another, and what Allah wanted is best for you." Hack and Newton 1996, page number 9. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Keep your whip where your wife can see it." Kashaf, the Revealer, of Al-Zamshari, Volume 1, page 525. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "A man should not be asked why he beats his wife." Sunan Abu Dawud, Hadith number 2142. A woman came to Muhammad and begged him to stop her husband from beating her. Her skin was bruised so badly that it is described by Aisha as being greener than the green veil she was wearing. Muhammad did not admonish her husband, but instead ordered her to return to him and submit to his sexual desires. Sahih al-Bukhari, Book 72, Hadith number 715. The Quran in Surah 38, verse 44 states, "And take in your hand a green branch and beat her with it, and do not break your oath." Allah told Job to beat his wife. Tafsir al-Jalalain. Job has sworn to beat his wife 100 times on one occasion for coming late to him. So, Allah told him to beat his wife and not violate his oath. The Prophet Job took 100 branches and smote his wife 100 times. Nonetheless, the Bible does not mention that God told Job to beat his wife. In Sahih Muslim, Aisha narrated a hadith in which she admitted that the Prophet struck her on her chest until it caused pain. "He struck me on the chest which caused me pain," and then said, "Did you think that Allah and his apostle would deal unjustly?" Sahih Muslim, Book 4, Hadith number 2127. The hadiths, which speak about women, are countless in number. A few of them show favor to women. Those few hadiths, which speak well about women, are referring to her as a mother and not as a wife or daughter. Abu Hurairah reported that a man came to the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, and asked, "O Messenger of Allah, who is the person who has the greatest right on me with regards to kindness and attention?" He replied, "Your mother." "Then who?" He replied, "Your mother." "Then who?" He replied, "Your mother." "Then who?" He replied, "Your father." The Prophet also said paradise is under the feet of mothers. Dr. Suaib Hassan, commenting on the second hadith, said, "The above hadith with this wording is da'if, meaning unauthentic, but its meaning is contained in the hadith of Ibn Majah and Al-Nasai that a man came to the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, and said, 'O Messenger of Allah, I intend to go on a military expedition, jihad in the way of Allah, but I have come to ask your advice.' He said, 'Is your mother alive?' He said, 'Yes.' He said, 'Then stay with her, for the garden is under her feet.' Hack and Newton 1996, page 12. Feminists, reformists, and liberal Muslims very often quote the above two hadiths to support their views that Islam is an egalitarian religion and that misogynistic hadiths are the invention of later generations. However, as we have mentioned above, these two hadiths advise sons to be kind to their mothers, but neither the husbands to their wives nor fathers to their daughters or brothers to their sisters. In addition, the two hadiths are not accepted as authentic because neither al-Bukhari nor Muslim included them in their collections. Only Ibn Majah and Al-Nasai mention them. These two collections are hardly quoted by modern Muslim scholars. Having the foregoing mentioned verses and hadiths in the main sacred books of Islam, the Quran, and the authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, still some Muslim scholars claim that the religion is favoring women and gives them equal rights with men. It is hard to believe such a claim. To accept the egalitarian message of Islam and to deny its misogynistic teachings, for me, is only wishful thinking. Such efforts will not benefit those for whom the efforts are made. Muslim women who live in the West are not liberated because of these efforts, but the secular societies in which they live granted them equality with their men. Muslim women who live in Muslim societies still live under the bondage of Muhammad's misogynistic teachings. We have mentioned in general the teachings of the Quran and the hadiths about women. Now, we have to briefly state the effects these teachings have exercised on the Muslim woman's life. I will refer to marriage in general and concentrate on polygamy. For nothing is more criticized in Islam than the practice of polygamy. Critics pointed out many reasons to show that women in Muslim societies are treated as secondary citizens with no equal rights to men. But critics singled out polygamy as evidence of the oppression of women in Islam. For that reason, in our modern day, scholars are extensively exploring the place of women in Islam and made polygamy the focus of their research. Marriage is defined as a permanent, immediate, and unconditional civil contract between two persons of opposite sexes for mutual enjoyment and procreation of children. Varma 1988, page 56. As we shall see soon, this definition does not apply to the concept of marriage in Islam. The two concerned persons who should sign the marriage contract in Muslim countries are not necessarily the husband and wife. According to the two schools of Sharia, namely Shafi and Maliki, a woman is utterly incompetent to enter into a marriage contract either herself or for another, even though her guardian should authorize her to do so. A father can contract the marriage of his virgin daughter without asking for her consent, whatever her age. Varma 1988, page 24. By the way, all Middle East and North African Muslim countries are following the Shafi and Maliki Sharia schools. So, countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt are following those rigid schools of Sharia law. In fact, 85% of Muslims in the world are either Shafis or Malikis. There is no specific minimum age limitation in marriage in Islam. This is because the Prophet Muhammad married Aisha at the age of 6 and slept with her and raped her when she was underage, a mere child of 9 years old. The Quran also allows the girl to get married before she reaches the age of having her menstruation. Such of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, for them the prescribed period, if you have any doubts, is 3 months, and for those who have no courses, it is the same for those who carry life within their wombs. Their period is until they deliver their burdens, and for those who fear Allah, He will make their path easy. See Surah Al-Talaq 65, verse 4. The commentator Ibn Kathir explains this verse as follows: there are 3 kinds of women. Those who grown old and their menses ceased, and those small girls who have not yet had their menses. The old women and the underage girls who have not yet menstruated, if get married and divorced, have to stay 3 months before they are allowed to get married again. The third type of women is those who still have their periods or are pregnant. Those women have to stay 3 months and 10 days before they remarry again. There are 5 types of marriages in Islam. 1. Monogamous marriage. It is a lawful relationship between one man and one woman. 2. Polygamous marriage. A lawful relationship between one man and more than one woman, not to exceed 4 wives. 3. Mutta or temporary enjoyment marriage. It is a temporary lawful relationship between a man and a woman. The relationship can be 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 days, or a month. The enjoyment of marriage does not require a judge or a witness. The man says to the woman, "I marry you myself," and she says to him, "I marry you myself." This kind of marriage differs from ordinary marriage because it does not aim at a continuous married life, but the enjoyment in a lawful way. It was permitted by the Prophet but abolished by the second Caliph, Omar ibn al-Khattab. Since this kind of marriage is permitted by the Quran, in Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 24, the Caliph Omar had no legal right to abolish it. According to Sharia law, no one has the right to abrogate any verse from the Quran after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. The Mutta marriage is unlawful in Sunni Islam, but practices today by Shiite Islam. In Iran, it is estimated that over 70% of temporary wives became prostitutes, quoting Woodsmall 1983, page 119. 4. Al-Masyar marriage. Al-Masyar marriage institution in Islam, allowing for a lesser form of relationship between man and woman than normal marriage. Misyar is an official relationship between man and woman, but does neither involve that the two live together, nor that the man is economically responsible. Misyar allows the man to have a normal wife in addition to his other wives. The Misyar wife is expected to live with her parents, and her husband can visit her according to a predetermined schedule. Misyar is being practiced in Saudi Arabia and Egypt for years. The Egyptian Sunni Imam Sheikh Mohammed Sayed Tantawi and the former Mufti of Egypt officially legalized it in February 1999, and he is also defending the arrangement of Misyar. 5. Al-Zawaj al-Urfi, or the traditional marriage. Al-Zawaj al-Urfi, or traditional marriage, is a kind of Islamic marriage, which is socially unrecognized and unaccepted by Muslim families. It is like the Shiite Mutta marriage, or enjoyment marriage, where the boy and the girl marry each other without the knowledge of their families and without mazun or judge, witnesses, and any official document. In Khartoum, Sudan, every year hundreds of Muslim girls are impregnated through Al-Zawaj al-Urfi and then delivered their babies and threw them in the garbage containers to be eaten up by stray dogs. Sometimes, people rescued those castaway babies before they died. Many times, those babies lost some parts of their bodies, such as a hand or leg, which had been eaten up by stray dogs. The recent increase in the number of those castaway babies forced the Islamic government of Sudan to open the Dar al-Maigoma Center to take care of those unwanted babies. However, no one is allowed to adopt one of those children and give them his name because adoption is illegal in Islam. In order to justify his scandalous marriage with his daughter-in-law, Prophet Muhammad forbade the noble social institution of adoption and deprived millions of orphaned or illegitimate Muslim children of being adopted by other families. Without this option of adoption, thousands of Muslim girls every year either killed themselves for fear of bringing disgrace to their families or got slain in honor killings by their families when they became pregnant without the accepted marriage bonds. Polygamy in Islam. The Quranic authority for polygamy, and if ye fear that you will not deal fairly of the orphans, marry of the women who seem good to you, 2 or 3 or 4, and if ye fear that ye cannot do justice to so many, then marry one wife, or have sex with the female captives of war that your right hands possess. Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 3. The above verse does not only allow a Muslim man to marry 4 wives at the same time, but also allows him without condition or limit to have as many numbers of female captive slaves as he wishes. A Muslim man is allowed to have sex with his female slave without marrying her. The Prophet Muhammad had sex without marriage with his 2 female slaves. One is Maria, a Christian Copt, and Rayhana, a Jewish girl. According to the well-known Muslim scholar Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, polygamy is necessary because it satisfies human instinct. Quoting from Mernisai 1987, page 47. The Moroccan scholar Fatima Mernisai, commenting on the words of al-Ghazali, stated that this kind of argument reveals to us the Muslim theory of sexuality. For the man burdened with a strong sexual desire and for whom one woman is not enough to guarantee his chastity for a married person being abstention from fornication, it is recommended that he adds to the first wife others. The total should not exceed 4. Mernisai 1987, page 47. Commenting on the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 223, Fatima Mernisai states that Islam allows the Muslim man to have anal sex with his wife against her wish. The verse was revealed when an Ansari woman refused to allow her husband to have anal sex with her. Mernisai 1993, page 145. Then the woman went to Salama, wife of the Prophet and women's representative, and requested her to bring the matter before Muhammad. When Salama inquired from the Prophet, a verse descended from heaven, which says, "Your women are a tilt for you to cultivate, so approach your tilt in any position you wish." Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verse 223. This verse gave men the right to choose the sexual position they want and, if they desire, They are permitted to sodomize their wives against their wishes. Mernisi 1993, page 146. Polygamy in Islam is associated with the belief that women are sources of pleasure for men. The history of Islam revealed that women were used by their male partners for the purpose of sexual enjoyment and entertainment. Examples are stories of 1001 Nights, in English called the Arabian Nights, Kitab al-Ghani of Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani, female pleasure slaves, for the Abbasid caliphs and the Huri girls. 72 virgins of paradise who are supposed to be offered as rewards to male believers. Those virgins are described in the Quran as beautiful, eternally virgin, and eternally loving. Mernisi 1988, page 71. Those sublime female creatures neither menstruate nor defecate nor urinate. They cannot become pregnant by babies either. The descriptions of the Huri girls in the Quran have a great effect on the relationship between men and women in Islam. Men look at their earthly wives as inferiors to the Huris in beauty, loyalty, purity, and pleasure providing. The Huri girls are not human beings, but special female creatures that God created for men's enjoyment and pleasure in paradise. The Quran describes the physical and sexual beauties and attraction of those heavenly female creatures in remarkable ways. Lo, those men who kept their duty will be in a place secure amid gardens and water springs, attired in silk embroidery, facing one another. Even so, it will be. And we shall wed them unto Huri girls, fair ones with wide, lovely eyes. Surah Al-Dukhan 44, verses 51 to 54. Therein maidens resting their glances, untouched before them by any man or jinn. Those virgins are lovely as rubies, beautiful as coral. Surah Al-Rahman 55, verses 56 to 58. The white, the beautiful ones, Huri girls, with large eyeballs, kept close in their pavilions. Surah Al-Rahman 55, verse 72. Surely for the God-fearing awaits a place of security, gardens and vineyards and maidens of swelling breasts, kawab, like of age, and a cup overflowing. Surah Al-Muzammil 73, verse 33. Kawab means the woman who has two big boobs that are swelling and firm, not sagging. Hack and Newton 1996, page 16. The Prophet Muhammad said, "A woman does not give trouble to her husband in this world, but his wife of the pure-eyed ones, Huri virgins, does say to her, 'Do not give him trouble. May Allah destroy you. He is only a passing guest with you. It is extremely near that he soon leaves you and comes to us.'" Mishkat al-Masabi, Book 1, Hadith number 62. The Prophet was asked, "Do we have sex in paradise?" He answered, "Yes, by he who holds my soul in his hand, and it will be done daman, that is the intercourse done with such shove and disturbance. And when it is finished, she will return pure and virgin again." Hack and Newton 1996, page 17. When I was in grade 12, I asked my religious teacher, why did Allah create the beautiful virgins in paradise when there are women on earth? He told me that the Prophet Muhammad predicted that most of the women on earth would go to hell. He quoted to me this hadith. The Prophet said to a group of women, "O women, give alms, as I have seen that the majority of the dwellers of hellfire were you women." Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 1, Hadith number 301. Besides the legal authorization of the practice of polygamy by Sharia law, there are other social factors that encourage the practice in Muslim societies. The most important of these factors are honor, barrenness, and circumcision of Muslim girls. Fatima Mernisi stated the concepts of honor and virginity locate the prestige of a man between the legs of a woman. Mernisi 1988, page 34. When a woman fails to bleed because of penetration to break her hymen, is considered a failure of the social test. She is taken back by the groom and his family to her own family. Yamani 1981, page 149. In some cases, the husband might keep his wife, but marry another one to meet the virginity test. However, the first woman would be treated inferior to the second wife. I would like to talk briefly about one of the most serious problems that Muslim girls face from childhood, the circumcision of girls in Islam. Circumcision of girls or female genital mutilation is practiced in most Arab countries and more in countries like Sudan, Egypt, Iraq, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia. The practice is recommended by the Prophet and hence considered a sunnah. The main reason for the circumcision of girls, according to the jurists, is to restrain lust or the sex drive. The girl nowadays is exposed to all kinds of temptations, they argue, which lead to depravity and corruption in society. According to the Prophet's statement, circumcision is a law for men and a preservation of honor for women. Female circumcision, also called female genital mutilation, involves the removal of the sealing of the labia majora and the labia minora together after the entire clitoris has been removed. Lois, 1985, page 115. Problems that result from female circumcision are that the woman is no more capable of normal sexual intercourse and childbearing, and no longer able to gratify her spouse's appetite. She is cast out for a younger and healthier wife. Lois, 1985, page 117. Some modern Muslim writers like Dr. Nawal al-Saadawi, Fatima Mernisai, and Qasim Amin discourage the practice of polygamy. As understood by Fatima Mernisai, polygamy is a way for a man to humiliate the woman as a sexual being. Mernisai, page 48. It is commonly believed in Morocco that the wife can be humiliated by marrying another woman beside her as a second wife. The Muslim Sudanese people share the same opinion, for they believe that the best way to chastise a woman is to marry another woman with her. In Sudan and Egypt, the second wife is called al-Dora, which means the female evildoer. How can the just God allow the husband to bring an evildoer and rival wife to his first wife? In conclusion, the above accounts have proved without a shadow of a doubt that women in Islam are the most oppressed and abused women in the world. They also have shown the deeply ingrained misogynistic teachings in the Islamic sacred books, namely the Quran and the Hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad. The only way for a Muslim woman to obtain her rights is to exit Islam and consider it a disgusting misogynistic religion that gives the man the right to oppress and abuse her under the guise of divine revelation.